sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but today's topic does not come with a link in the bio so that you may purchase access to any specific OnlyFans account. We know many of you filthy degenerates were thinking there was video footage, but there isn't. Thank God. From sending bomb threats to Sony headquarters, to console warring on the operating table, to bragging about taking narcotics over playing Xbox, PlayStation fanboys do not hold back. They will go to great lengths just to console war. And if you don't believe me, well, today's story may finally be the nail in the coffin for you. You may never look at your PlayStation console the same ever again after today. Well, at the very least, you won't look at that white color coating on the console the same ever again. In general, any single time you'll look at the PS5, you may lose your appetite after this, so viewer discretion is advised. If you really love your PlayStation 5 and you don't want to jeopardize the image of it, now's the time to click off this video. I never once in my life thought I would be reporting on such a story, but here we are. And don't forget to subscribe to us here at the BNN, because getting this news to you requires work and effort. Help get the BNN to the perfect 69K subscriber number that we've wanted for so long. So, with that being said, Femtango, would you please take us to today's strange fetish?
Fred, I'm standing outside of the Los Angeles sperm bank where I'm being told this is only meant for human use and not intended for ponies or other horse-like mammals.
Oh, not again, Femtango, like you did earlier with the weather. You dumb bitch. Crap. Apologies to all viewers and mainly the sponsors out there. We told our female here at the BNN to ensure to do a little research on the PlayStation fanboy that drinks his own jizz. Instead, it would seem Femtango went over to the sperm bank in the local gayborhood, confused out of her mind on the substances I gave her, that I shouldn't be admitting to live. And anyways, I'll take over this story. Can't leave it in the hands of a woman. So, sorry Femtango, I don't know. Stay put where you are. Try not to get pregnant. Snowboater with an unrivaled gift game. X Games Aspen. Berg Festival PlayStation. Well, gee, it would seem this Kyrian fellow is quite the bee's knees. And obviously, residing from Liverpool, England, it makes a lot more sense why his current hobby is, well, what it is. No thanks, that's Pepsi. I prefer Coke. Well, now it would seem snowboarding as a hobby makes a lot more sense for this fellow. Now we know what you're thinking here at the BNN. Hold up, Frit. Just because the man prefers the creamy lotion of another man doesn't mean we should ridicule him. Not only is it far less humiliating than a golden shower, but it also might be healthier than Pepsi. You clickbaited us yet again, Frit. The BNN should be sued. Trump, 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 Trump. Well, gosh, we've never seen so many people upset we didn't just show a man drink himself. But we understand you were promised a circus. Now where are the clowns? You seem like the type of person that drinks its own cum. Don't you? See, we're not quite sure how it's done in England here at the BNN, but in most cases, it's handled with tissues or cleaned off by a fatherless woman. The only type of people that drink their own may have been born with the club foot and uneven eyes. My dude, you drink your own cum, sit your ass down. Like you don't!
What's that dipshit doing out there? Are you friends with him? You know he drinks his own cum, right? Oh my god, this is rich!
One wonders why. He had a second chance to deny the allegations, but instead of doing so, he confirms he does indeed like to drink his own glue. And what's more is he says it with a slight bit of pride as well. So PlayStation fanboys, in their spare time, love to console war on Twitter, spark up riot cities, and drink their own reproductive fluids. So when this PlayStation fanboy had the audacity to tell the BNN that nobody in our family respects us, we had to remind him exactly what his hobby was in his spare time, and God only hopes nobody he loves dearly ever finds out he does this. It would be a shame if the internet was to somehow find out this person partakes of his own nutsack. Alright, now we've reached that part of the show where we must do a weekly recap on the Xbox tax. This week, not only did the media not equally report on PlayStation laying off 900 employees, but it would also seem certain websites have made the mistake of allowing PlayStation fanboy troll accounts on Twitter to become reputable sources for their websites. Notable insider at Japan Hates Xbox sheds light on Xbox's parity clause with Sega. That's right! Icon Era took a PlayStation fanboy troll account like Japan Hates Xbox, someone who literally tweets out nothing but negative Xbox news 24/7 and pro PlayStation news. That is who they consider a notable insider, someone who's been wrong about basically everything as well. But I'm told there is no Xbox tax. Websites just pulling in any jackass as long as they say something negative about Xbox, because those headlines are perfect. You see, because over there at Icon Era, they have threads where people basically beat their meats to negative Xbox news. So much so that they go ahead and call Japan Hates Xbox a trusted analyst when the only thing he could be trusted with is to not spread negative PlayStation news. Keep in mind, this is the person the website advocated. Thank you at Icon Era. I'm doing my best to get to the bottom of this story. I've joined forces with a few Japanese journalists and game devs. We want to know how Xbox is managing to weasel ports of certain Sega games that have no business being on Xbox. Something ain't right. Something ain't right indeed. It's this Xbox tax narrative that will unfortunately never be debunked thanks to websites like Icon Era, IGN, GameSpot, Kotaku. Sites that proactively feed off of any kind of bad Xbox news they can get. They don't care if it's accurate or not. I mean, never mind the fact that they were okay with using an account named Japan Hates Xbox in the first place. Should have been a dead giveaway. But the person running Icon Era's Twitter account didn't even remove the original thread because it was full of misinformation. He removed it because he was annoyed at all the responses he was getting on social media. Again, they have to drag their feet to correcting misinformation about Xbox all the time. So curious, isn't it? Makes you wonder. Publications accidentally forgetting to include Xbox in the platforms games are going to be released on, posting articles talking about how the industry would be better if Xbox was gone, citing PlayStation fanboys on Twitter as reputable sources. We need our bad Xbox news and we're going to get it one way or another. Now, finally, onto today's featured presentation. A specific Nickelodeon character many of you are quite familiar with. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we have Reforged Gaming in the broadcast station with us today. How are you doing, Reforged?
Like, what happened to you?
From what we've been told here at the BNN, people are planning to make a video out of you, to the point even Alex decided to stop hiding and make a video.
I had to get him. He's my boy. But I had to get him on Twitter. I was like, what happened to you?
Well, nonetheless, we're glad you could make it. Please, share with us your take on exclusivity.
Exclusives are anti-consumer. Anti-consumer is a misnomer. It's not a term that makes any sense. Why? Because it assumes there are things that are pro-consumer. Nothing's pro-consumer. Every decision these companies make is pro-profit. And if they've convinced you that this is pro-consumer, then you're just a sucker. Because all you're doing is buying into this facade of altruism, this facade of an ideology, so that they can get your money. There's no such thing as pro-consumer. There never has been.
Not sure we can agree with that, Reforge. I don't think a term like anti-consumer that's been used for over 100 years is just gonna suddenly disappear. And likewise, some things can be pro-consumer. For instance, when PlayStation wasn't charging people for online, that was pretty pro-consumer. When Microsoft had the $1 for Game Pass subscription deal, that was heavily pro-consumer. And as for Nintendo, well, we don't have a single instance of them being pro-consumer, so I can't really point to one, but plenty examples of them being anti-consumer. A company looking to make money can lead to good things for you, and some bad. Whatever works out in your favor is essentially pro-consumer. I mean, It's pretty self-explanatory. When one gaming company decides to charge you full price to play something all over again in 4K, and then there's another company that decides to just give you all of that for free, what words would you use to describe both of these situations? If Microsoft was to pull Call of Duty off PlayStation and Nintendo, what word would you use to describe such a move, Reforge? Does that type of exclusivity seem to be in favor of consumers? If not, then anti-consumer is the perfect word used to describe this. Because if Microsoft was to do that, it would absolutely be anti-consumer. And I'm pretty sure your brain would have absolutely no problem processing that.
We use these terms because we're like, well, this thing, we've said that about Helldivers. We're like, this monetization is pro-player. And what we really mean is it's leaning toward the player in a way that is, it's something you can interact with and not feel like you're being taken advantage of. But don't be fooled. The only reason they're doing that is because the developers decided this is the best way for us to make profit. It's driven by profit. It's not driven by you. They're not like, well, we really care about the player. No, you care about profitability.
Exactly. And a drive to make profit can benefit people, benefit consumers. If someone says, hey, I have this that I made, and I tell them, I want that. Take my money. Now I have thing I wanted and you have my money. A business transaction. Now it's all about ensuring I stay happy enough to return. See, you have no problem grasping this concept, Reforge, because here at the BNN, we've caught you on several occasions saying pro player, which is just basically saying pro-consumer. So we know that you know it is a very real thing. For you, it was quite easy to look at Helldivers 2 and explain how pro-player that was in comparison to other games. Why? Well, that's because different companies handle things differently, different developers manage things differently. So you have a sort of measuring stick that you can use when it comes to anti-consumerism and pro-consumerism. We know what companies are capable of giving away, and we know what they're capable of taking away. We have a way to gauge this. Have for a long time. And believe me, exclusivity is not like on the far end of that measuring stick, but it's still on there. Because there's no way in hell anybody finds it anything less than anti-consumer when games that once existed on your platform are pulled off so that they can be made exclusive for other consoles instead. We're talking about well-established pre-existing franchises like Fallout and Elder Scrolls. Franchises like that being pulled from PlayStation are not in consumers' favor. And when I'm talking about the benefits to consumers, I'm talking about tangible things, not imaginary bragging rights or imaginary console identity for your box. That's basically the only arguments Reforge has.
Yeah, the notion that exclusives is anti-consumer, it's like, how many developers have come out and said that building for one ecosystem is better for us? You get the product to market faster, it's better optimized, and it's easier on us as the developer. And you're like, it's anti-consumer. Shut up.
Mr. Reforge, I hate to interrupt you like that, but we're talking about pro-consumerism and anti-consumerism, not pro-developer or anti-developer. The difficulty of the task has nothing to do with the consumer's end. Just because it makes a developer's job easier doesn't mean it makes things better for a consumer. I fail to see the connection here. Now, I could bring up all of those developers that have absolutely no problem porting to more than one platform day one, but then that would be like you, bringing up something totally unrelated to the original discussion. So we're not gonna do that.
Just shut up. Like, the ideologies are tiring. They're exhausting because they basically posture like it's an us versus them. It's us, the consumer, against these greedy corporate overlords. And it's like, no. We're all in this together. It's a symbiotic relationship. You can't be pro-gamer and constantly wail on the developers for doing what's necessary to make money because that's what they're supposed to do.
You know, Mr. Reforge, after your constant capping of Suicide Squad, I'm gonna have to dismiss basically everything you said. And you're lucky we're live here on the BNN where I have to be professional. And I can't point to comments about your forehead or hair. But when it came to Suicide Squad, that was the perfect example of it is definitely us versus them. Us being the consumers. We want to give you money for products that we like. But you have to make sure you make the thing we want. It's not rocket science. Quite possibly one of the easiest demands to make because it involves money. So I am 100% responsible for ensuring I don't get ripped off by greedy developers who are doing what you said, just looking to make profits, not their fault. Wow, what were they supposed to do other than try to make a quick cash grab? But don't worry, we're all in it together. What sort of delusional mindset is this, Reforge? Are you hoping to stay in good terms with all of these big gaming companies because you're hoping to secure the bag eventually? Well, let me tell you, if you're going to shill, at least shill a lot better than that. Because there's no way you're going to convince people that the same industry trying to sell them incomplete games at full price with season passes and microtransactions believes that we're all in this together. The only thing they seem to believe in is that the consumers are an endless well that's not gonna run dry eventually. It very much is an us versus them situation, and it's clear which side you've picked.
Now, yes, there are scummy practices, and we should call out scummy practices when they're trying to do things like Genshin does with the pity and the almost won and the sunk cost, and so you keep spending money, right? Sure, we can call out scummy practices.
Scummy practice? Just call it what it is, Reforge. It's anti-consumer.
But to act like exclusives are somehow anti-consumer when you get a product faster and at better quality and the developers like it, and then, yes, you can port it to other platforms later. I have no problem with timed exclusivity if that's the goal. I have no problem with that. But you can't sit here and act like building a game for the Nintendo Switch or building a game for the PS5, they've invested the money, the R&D, the tech, they worked hand in hand with the developers to ensure that the product, can come to market in a good way, optimized and on time. You can't sit here and say that's anti-consumer when consumers benefit from it.
Oh, really? Like with Spider-Man 2, right? Spider-Man 2 did not come out after multiple delays. It didn't release in a buggy state. It didn't release at significantly lower quality than its predecessor. No, not at all. Spider-Man 2, which didn't even have a New Game Plus at launch, missing gameplay features. Day one. That was totally pro-consumer, Being released as an exclusive really helped Spider-Man 2, didn't it, huh? Or how about Pokemon, eh? The quality of the last Pokemon game, that was totally pro-consumer, right? The way Pokemon launched on the Switch, that was very much in favor of gamers, right? I don't care what these developers say, all right? Them getting a chance to be lazier does nothing for me. So advocating for exclusivity because you're too lazy to port to other platforms ain't my problem. And it's not a good counter argument. So you think it would be very pro-consumer and beneficial to Call of Duty if it never showed up on PlayStation ever again? All so that Xbox gamers can get it sooner. Yeah, that works out in everyone's favor, right? The millions upon millions of people missing out. I don't think you understand. This sacrifice is actually good for you.
It's not anti-consumer. What it is it's you don't like it. That's what it is. There are plenty of consumers that bought a PS5 or bought a Nintendo Switch and they get a bunch of great games. Those consumers are happy. Why is your consumer ideology more important than theirs? Why do you just get to speak for the consumer blank check like, yeah, that's anti-consumer? What are you talking about?
Well, if you want to bring in the normies, you also have to remind yourself that the majority of these normies are not purchasing a console for its exclusivity. Hell, the word consumer may not even be in their vocabulary, to be real with you. I mean, if you're gonna bring in casuals to strengthen your argument, at least use them right, because otherwise it's really not that impressive to be like, look guys, I have all these uninformed people to back up my argument. You shouldn't have to rely on a crowd of people who never think once about this in their lives to try and help make your point for you. If you have actual positives that outweigh the negativity of exclusivity, present them now. Because consoles still selling and people being happy is not an argument.
Oh, I get it. It's anti-consumers like you.
Reforged, that doesn't make any sense. I play on PC. Exclusivity isn't a barrier for me. I get all of it. And obviously you do see the harm in exclusivity because during the entire ABK merger, you heavily pointed to the ramifications of removing Call of Duty from PlayStation, showing the large hole that would be left behind. You know of the ways millions could be affected. Stop pretending. There's no way to swing it into an overall positive. At most, it's a necessary evil.
Ideologues who think games should just be everywhere. Developers should just build their game for every platform and spread their budget and their optimization and their efficacy thin. They should do that because that's pro-consumer.
You don't have to like it, Reforged, but you're gonna have to start learning to live with it because that's the inevitable future, my friend. Exclusivity exists way less now than it did even 10 years ago. And there's a reason for that. Well, that's because the gaming market outgrew the console market. Selling the consoles is just becoming less and less of the priority as Sony and Microsoft look to expand far beyond just their consoles. A future I had predicted a long time ago. Exclusivity as a concept basically got destroyed on PlayStation, and yet you're still advocating for it as if it still exists.
Yes, it's so great to get multi-plat titles that were clearly not ready for launch but had to come to market anyway because eventually you got to crap or get off the pot, and we get games that aren't even ready for launch like Jedi Survivor. That's great. Yes, let's all stand and just raise a flag for that nonsense.
Yes, of course, Reforged. That's why Sony is going to be launching so many first-party studio games this year, right? Because solely focusing on PlayStation ensured you would get those games out sooner. How many years are we into this console's generation without a single banger? Miss me with this excuse. When I see Sega able to release multiple multi-platform games in a single 12-month span, while Sony can barely even get out one exclusive, should be telling, no? Your logic just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. You're pretending to know how all of this works. Like just because developers are developing for more than one platform means it's going to be a worse experience than an exclusive when we have multiple examples of that not being true.
In any business realm, if you came to them and said, we think that you should take on extra work, we think you should extend the length of the product coming to market, and we also think that you better not raise the price, you better not have any monetization baked in, you better not have any extra additive ways to recoup costs. The average business person would say, you sound like an idiot.
What, are you saying Sony and the developers behind Helldivers 2 are idiots? Because they launched the game alongside PC day one and basically quadrupled the amount of players they were ever expecting to the point that they were suffering from success? You want to call them idiots for developing alongside PC at the same time? I mean, could you imagine just how much bigger the game would get if it was on Xbox? It's crazy to think how successful it is right now, and yet it could still be even more successful. That's why I don't get about exclusives.
But that's what people are arguing for when they argue for exclusivity is anti-consumer. Games should launch everywhere. Asmongold says, I can't wait for Nintendo and PlayStation to die. So there are no consoles, and games are just everywhere. Everywhere where?
Just listen to yourself, though, Reforged. You find it unfathomable. You couldn't imagine a world where Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox games are on all phones, tablets, TVs, consoles, PCs. Is that really such an unbelievable future? Like, they can't comprehend that world. Everything they ever knew is changing right before their eyes, and they're in complete denial about it.
PCs? You think PCs are going to take over the world? I know the PC Master Race guys think that because they're drunk on this hubris that's what's coming.
This falls right in line with what you said last year when you told PC gamers, go get your own games. I want my exclusives. Stop touching my exclusives. It's always the PlayStation crowd. All the time. We don't even have to warn them that this is happening anymore. It's happening. But it's pointless to tell them because they still shelter themselves and refuse to accept that, yes, it is all on the PC.
It's PC. It's all going to be PC. And it's like, no. There's literally no way you're going to convince that level of market share to just suddenly abandon what they've done since childhood. We've been buying consoles since the Coleco and the Atari. And we're suddenly going to be like, yeah, no. I'm going to abandon everything I know and head over to an environment that costs more money. There's a stigma about it being confusing and hard. I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying there's a stigma.
Oh, yes, you guys will, and there's nothing you can do about it. Want to know how I know that is, Reforge? Because you literally can't afford to stop talking about video games. This is your job. This is your career. This is your hobby, whatever you want to call it. If you have to play on PC to continue your channel, you're gonna do it. So, shut up.
The anti-exclusive diatribes and suddenly acting like, oh, this is great. This is fantastic. Exclusives are bad. It's not driven, and this is why I get frustrated by it. The people that are suddenly like, yeah, exclusives are bad. This is where the industry's going. I'm glad Microsoft's doing this. It's not driven by what they believe. It isn't. Because they didn't believe it until this week.
I'm sorry, Mr. Reforge, but we're gonna have to cut your mic off there and call it a night. We're done with you. Sorry, but here at the PNN, we have been talking about this passionately for like almost 7 years now. It's not some ideology or belief we suddenly picked up overnight. Not with me, anyway. Those who've been watching me for a long time know exactly how I feel about exclusivity, and I thank you for sticking by me during all those times when everyone said I was crazy. They ain't laughing now. Instead, they're hitting the block button because they have to suck up their pride and realize Fritango was right and I was wrong. Oh, sorry, Frit Burgundy. Well, anyways, Reforge, I hope exclusivity goes away permanently just so I can see you end up playing on PC and seeing how totally unaffected your life will be by it. And as per usual, thank you for letting us into your home. This has been Frit Burgundy with the BNN, signing off. Thank you for joining us in another episode of Ponies Gone Wild. Until then, we'll be seeing you in the next one.